judicial leadership roles across the region. The numbers speak for themselves. In South Asia, women account for less than 10% of judges, and in some countries, the figure is even lower in the higher courts. Persistent structural barriers, cultural norms, and institutional biases continue to hinder women's advancement, limiting not just their professional growth, but also the broader impact of a truly inclusive judiciary. Together with our partners, UNDP is committed to address these challenges through regional initiatives such as the Judicial Integrity Network in ASEAN and the Regional Gender Initiative on gender justice. UNDP supports national institutions and strengthens gender-responsive justice systems and promotes women's leadership in the judiciary. Our research and programming on justice and human rights activities in over 14 countries in the region have underscored the critical role of women judges in ensuring more gender-sensitive courts, particularly in cases of gender-based violence and cases that address bias and discrimination. Today's discussion brings together legal experts, policymakers, and practitioners from across the region to explore solutions for overcoming barriers to women's leadership in the judiciary. We will hear about successful policies, innovative strategies, and country experiences that have paved the way for progress. Importantly, this platform serves as an opportunity to foster regional dialogue and collective action towards a judiciary that is representative, inclusive, and gender responsive. Ladies and gentlemen, in the current global climate where we see backsliding on human rights and the rights of women and girls, we need to safeguard progress that has been made. We look forward to work together with our regional and national partners to continue to strengthen women's access to justice and leadership in the judiciary. Allow me to extend my deepest appreciation to all our panelists and participants for joining us today. Your insights and expertise are invaluable in shaping the way forward. I look forward to a meaningful and engaging discussion, and thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Gerd. Next, we honor to hear from the Honorable Chief Justice in Thailand. She has prepared a pre-recorded video to share her insights on the significance of advancing women's leadership in the judiciary. So let's watch the video.
ท่านผู้มีเกียรติและผู้เข้าร่วมการสัมมนาทุกท่านดิฉันรู้สึกเป็นเกียรติและยินดีเป็นอย่างยิ่งที่ได้กล่าวเปิดการสัมมนาภายใต้หัวข้อกระแสการเปลี่ยนแปลงผู้พิพากษาสตรีในภูมิภาคเอเชียซึ่งจัดขึ้นในวันนี้อันตรงกับวันผู้พิพากษาสตรีสากลนับเป็นโอกาสสำคัญที่ผู้พิพากษาสตรีจากทั่วภูมิภาคเอเชียได้มารวมตัวกันเพื่อแลกเปลี่ยนมุมมองและแนวทางในการส่งเสริมบทบาทของสตรีในกระบวนการยุติธรรมโดยเฉพาะในระบบตุลาการของภูมิภาคเอเชียองค์การสหประชาชาติได้ประกาศให้วันที่ 10 มีนาคมของทุกปีซึ่งตรงกับวันนี้เป็นวันผู้พิพากษาสตรีสากลเพื่อเน้นย้ำถึงความก้าวหน้าในการส่งเสริมความเท่าเทียมทางเพศในกระบวนการยุติธรรมซึ่งสอดคล้องกับการพัฒนาที่ยั่งยืนที่เป็นเป้าหมายของสหประชาชาติโดยมุ่งเน้นให้แต่ละประเทศให้ความสำคัญกับสัดส่วนของผู้พิพากษาสตรีในระบบตุลาการอันถือเป็นดัชนีสำคัญที่สะท้อนถึงความก้าวหน้าในการสร้างความเสมอภาคและการเข้าถึงความยุติธรรมสำหรับทุกคนแม้ว่าในอดีตสตรีต้องเผชิญกับข้อจำกัดมากมายในการทำงานด้านกระบวนการยุติธรรมทั้งจากกฎระเบียบแนวปฏิบัติและทัศนคติที่ปิดกั้นไม่ให้สตรีเข้ามามีบทบาทสำคัญแต่ปัจจุบันข้อจำกัดเหล่านี้ได้ลดน้อยลงท่ามกลางกระแสการเปลี่ยนแปลงความคิดของสังคมสิทธิของสตรีในการทำงานในกระบวนการยุติธรรมได้ขยายตัวอย่างเห็นได้ชัด โดยเฉพาะอย่างยิ่งในประเทศไทยสตรีมีบทบาทสำคัญมากขึ้นในวิชาชีพต่างๆไม่ว่าจะเป็นผู้พิพากษาพนักงานอัยการตำรวจทนายความตั้งแต่ปีพ.ศ. 2494 กฎหมายไทยได้กำหนดให้การพิจารณาพิพากษาคดีเด็กและเยาวชนต้องมีผู้พิพากษาไม่น้อยกว่า2 คนผู้พิพากษาสมทบอีก2 คนซึ่งอย่างน้อยต้องเป็นสตรี1 คนต่อมาพ.ศ. 2497 กฎหมายไทยเปิดโอกาสให้สตรีรับราชการเป็นผู้พิพากษาจึงเป็นหลักฐานที่แสดงให้เห็นว่าระบบกฎหมายและสังคมไทยตระหนักถึงความสำคัญของการเข้ามามีบทบาทของสตรีในการบริหารจัดการกระบวนการยุติธรรมของประเทศปัจจุบันประเทศไทยมีผู้พิพากษาสตรี 1,943 คนคิดเป็น36%ของจำนวนผู้พิพากษาทั้งหมดและมีแนวโน้มที่จะเพิ่มขึ้นเรื่อยๆในระบบตุลาการของไทยในปัจจุบันนั้นถือว่าไม่มีข้อจำกัดในความเจริญก้าวหน้าในสายอาชีพของผู้พิพากษาสตรีความก้าวหน้านั้นขึ้นอยู่กับความรู้ความสามารถและความประพฤติของแต่ละบุคคลโดยไม่คำนึงถึงเพศด้วยเหตุนี้จึงเห็นได้ว่าศาลยุติธรรมไทยมีผู้พิพากษาสตรีที่ดำรงตำแหน่งสำคัญหลายตำแหน่งไม่ว่าจะเป็นตำแหน่งประธานศาลฎีกาเลขาธิการประธานศาลฎีกาเลขาธิการสถาบันพัฒนาข้าราชการฝ่ายตุลาการศาลยุติธรรมและผู้พิพากษาหัวหน้าศาลเป็นต้นนับตั้งแต่ปีพ.ศ. 2563 ที่ประเทศไทยมีประธานศาลฎีกาสตรีท่านแรกและจวบจนปัจจุบันประเทศไทยมีประธานศาลฎีกาที่เป็นสตรีทั้งหมด4 ท่านรวมทั้งดิฉันด้วยนับเป็นก้าวสำคัญที่สะท้อนถึงพัฒนาการของสิทธิและความเท่าเทียมทางเพศในกระบวนการยุติธรรมของไทยอีกประการหนึ่งดิฉันในฐานะประธานศาลฎีกาได้วางแนวนโยบายสานต่อเสริมสร้างส่งต่ออย่างยั่งยืนเพื่อเป็นแนวทางปฏิบัติสำหรับผู้พิพากษาและข้าราชการศาลยุติธรรมทั่วประเทศโดยยึดหลักยึดมั่นในหน้าที่ตามวิถีตุลาการมุ่งมั่นขับเคลื่อนศาลยุติธรรมให้สอดคล้องกับบริบทของสังคมปัจจุบันและเตรียมพร้อมสำหรับการเปลี่ยนแปลงในอนาคตซึ่งนโยบายดังกล่าวข้างต้นให้ความสำคัญกับการสานต่อส่งเสริมและพัฒนาตามแนวนโยบายที่ดำเนินการมาแล้วเพื่อความต่อเนื่องและยั่งยืนเสริมสร้างสรรค์และพัฒนาสิ่งใหม่เพื่อการอำนวยความยุติธรรมตามภารกิจและหน้าที่ของศาลยุติธรรมส่งต่ออย่างยั่งยืนยึดมั่นและตระหนักในการทำหน้าที่ภายใต้กฎหมายเพื่อความสงบสุขของสังคมด้วยระบบคุณภาพและระบบคุณธรรมผู้พิพากษาสตรีในประเทศไทยต่างมีส่วนร่วมและเป็นกำลังสำคัญอย่างยิ่งในการผลักดันการดำเนินการตามนโยบายข้างต้นของดิฉันให้ประสบความสำเร็จและสำลิดผลอย่างเป็นรูปธรรมท่านผู้มีเกียรติทุกท่านดิฉันเชื่อมั่นว่าการสัมมนาในวันนี้ถือเป็นเวทีสำคัญในการแลกเปลี่ยนแนวปฏิบัติที่ดีรวมถึงการวิเคราะห์อุปสรรคที่ขัดขวางความก้าวหน้าของผู้พิพากษาสตรีโดยเน้นการสนับสนุนให้สตรีมีบทบาทในระบบตุลาการมากขึ้นการเรียนรู้จากกรณีศึกษาต่างๆและมุมมองที่หลากหลายของผู้เข้าร่วมการสัมมนาจะช่วยยกระดับมาตรฐานและศักยภาพของระบบตุลาการในภูมิภาคเอเชียดิฉันขอขอบคุณทุกท่านที่เข้าร่วมการสัมมนาในวันนี้และขอให้การสัมมนาครั้งนี้ประสบความสำเร็จบรรลุเป้าหมายที่ตั้งไว้เพื่อร่วมกันสร้างสังคมที่ยุติธรรมเท่าเทียมและเสมอภาคสำหรับทุกคนขอบคุณค่ะ
Chief Justice for her inspiring remarks. Next, I will pass it over to my colleague Simone, who will be the moderator for today's panel discussion. So Simone, over to you.
Thank you, Sheila, and good morning, everyone. Apologies once again, we had a few technical issues. My name is Simone Boneschi, and I serve as the Regional Rule of Law and Human Rights Specialist at the UNDP Bangkok Regional Hub. It's my pleasure to moderate today's important discussion on advancing women leadership in the judiciary across Asia. Inspired by the words of the Honorable Chief Justice of Thailand, who highlighted key policies that foster an increasing presence of women judicial leadership in the country, today's discussion aims to deepen our understanding of women representation in judicial system across the region, with a particular focus on Indonesia, Pakistan, and Thailand. In particular, we will explore key questions, including what challenges and opportunities do women face in Asia judicial systems, what mechanisms effectively support women advancement into leadership roles within the judiciary, and finally, we will also look at how do regional diversity and social cultural complexities influence women's experience in the judiciary. To help us navigate this important discussion, we are honored to have a distinguished panel of experts who will share their insights on advancing gender equality in the judiciary. Let me introduce our esteemed speakers in order of speaking. Professor Melissa Crouch is a leading scholar and a professor at the Faculty of Law and Justice at the University of New South Wales, Sydney. Her research on law and religion, constitutionalism, and law in the Global South, among other areas, has shaped academic and policy discussion worldwide. Her latest book, Women and the Judiciary in the Asia Pacific, provides a comprehensive analysis of gender and judicial systems in the region. Justice Dr. Saitip Sukatipan is a justice of the Supreme Administrative Court of Thailand with a PhD in political science from the University of Hawaii at Manoa. She has served as a judge for the first instance, presiding judge of a chamber and presiding of the Rayong Administrative Court until 2022, before assuming her current role. Professor Dr. Arksal Salim is a legal scholar and secretary of the Directorate General of Islamic Education at the Ministry of Religious Affairs in Indonesia. His research focuses on Islamic law and gender representation in religious courts, and he recently published a paper titled Gendering the Islamic Judiciary, Female Judges in the Religious Courts of Indonesia. Ms. Rida Tahir is a barrister at law and advocate of the High Courts of Pakistan. She specializes in human rights litigation with a focus on women and children's rights. She also the writer of the journal article, Equal Representation of Women in the Superior Judiciary, a comparative analysis between Pakistan and the United Kingdom. And finally, Ms. Hannah Lim is the Senior Counsel on Law and Policy Reform at the Asia Development Bank. She has extensive experience in legal digitization across Asia and the Pacific. And before joining ADB, she was the Strategic Partnership Lead for Asia and Pacific at LexisNexis. In addition to our speakers, we are now also honored to have Justice Nani Indrawati from the Supreme Court of Indonesia, who will deliver closing remarks. Justice Nani served as Assistant Deputy Chief Justice on the Supreme Court from 2006 to 2019, and is currently representative of the Gender Advisory Group within the UNDP-supported Judicial Integrity Network in Asia. As mentioned, Justice Nani will deliver closing remarks at the end of the webinar. With that, I now would like to turn to our first speakers, Professor Melissa Crouch. Nice to see you online, Professor. You have collaborated with a group of experts and researchers on a very important book in the region, Women and Judiciary in the Asia Pacific. It has been recognized as the first in-depth examination of judicial feminization in the region, providing new empirical insights into when, if, and how women judges make a difference. Professor, could you please share with us some of the most striking findings from your research and explain how these findings contribute to the broader discussion on gender equality within Asia's judicial system? Over to you, Professor.
Thank you. And thank you to you and to all at the Bangkok Hub for the opportunity to speak today. I'd also like to acknowledge the other distinguished guests on the panel, particularly our judges. And it's wonderful to see some of you who I have met before and very much looking forward to this discussion and debate. Let me also just begin by a brief acknowledgement of country based here in Sydney. So usually in Australia, when we have an event, we like to acknowledge the First Nations people of this country, which here in Sydney is the Bidjigal and Gadigal peoples of the Eora Nations. And I pay my respects to their elders past and present. It's very exciting to be part of this discussion today, and what an important and significant topic it is. And in preparation for this event, reflecting on the volume that was just mentioned, I'm struck by how much is changing in the region and how dynamic an area this issue of women judges and gender justice is. Of course, in my remarks today, I can't do full justice to what is happening in the region. There are a range of diverse trends, and I certainly can't cover all of those. But let me provide a brief overview, while also perhaps suggesting some areas that we still have to work on, or some future challenges and opportunities. So to begin with, this volume was really prompted by the, at the time, the impending resignation of Indonesia's only female Chief Justice, Maria Indrati, Farida Indrati. At this time, when she was due to step down, there was a debate in Indonesia. Should a woman replace Ibu Maria as the only woman on the bench, or should it be open to a merit-based appointment? In the end, there was another female justice who replaced her, and to this day, there only remains one female justice out of the 9 on the bench of Indonesia's peak constitutional court. But this is just a brief example and glimpse of debates that are happening across the region about when and how women are able to enter courts and whether there should be more structural means of representation on the bench. In the research that we did a few years ago, we began by looking at some of the research on women judges in the global north or Western context, such as America and the UK. And while there is a lot of that literature, some of those assumptions do not necessarily apply to many countries in Asia. And so I think to begin to really get at some of the realities of how many women judges are in the courts, what are the challenges they face to getting there, and what are the challenges once they get into judicial office, we need to reopen and re-examine some of the fundamental assumptions that we have about women judges. So we look at this idea of thin and thick conceptions of the feminization of the judiciary. By thin conceptions of feminization of the judiciary, we mean questions about how do women enter the courts and what are the barriers to getting there. And I think across some of the chapters in the research that we did, a common theme was that it begins with legal education and universities. We all know that that's where law is taught, and it very much depends on how many young women are entering law schools across universities in Asia as the potential pool to then go forward as judges. Of course, from there, it diverges between civil law and common law countries as to whether the judiciary is a career service or whether it is one that you enter into after a number of years of serving as a lawyer. And so again, some of the barriers along the way relate to the processes of becoming a judge or of becoming a lawyer, an advocate. In addition, so we then look at more thick conceptions of feminization. Actually, so let me just say one more thing on the thin conception, which is that I think we are still really at a very early stage across the region in terms of getting accurate and useful data about the number of women judges and understanding what that actually means. So I think it's one thing to have the data, which we don't have in all contexts, although we have it in some, but then it's another to really understand, well, maybe this country has 20% of judges who are women. What does that mean in that context? Or maybe it's 30%, or maybe it's 10%, as we heard before. But I think the question really comes down to then, what can and are those women judges able to do while in office, regardless of what percentage of the bench they might be. Coming then to the thick conception of feminization, this is where I think many scholars focus their efforts and where there is a lot of discussion and debate and not necessarily any resolution or agreement on what it might mean. That is that it is complex to think about what difference women judges make. We heard before about the challenges of the decline of democracy, and I think we do need to be realistic about the fact that many countries in the region have been influenced by various ideologies and forms of politics, some liberal, some illiberal, and this too affects the nature of the judiciary and what women are able to do while in office, particularly in courts that have constitutional jurisdiction and that may be more affected by the politics of the day. In addition, of course, there are cultural issues. There are issues of religion, whether a country is majority Islamic or Buddhist. There may be certain conceptions around what women can or should do and whether they can lead in professional roles of this kind. But of course, there are also practical considerations. And I think one of the common findings across many jurisdictions, whether it is the Global South or the Global North, is that many women judges do come from, or particularly those that make their way into apex courts, do come from families of means and wealth who are able to pay for their legal education, who are able to support their sort of startup of their careers, if you like, or perhaps who even have family members, parents or uncles and so on, who themselves have gone to law school or been judges or lawyers. And so those kinds of socioeconomic and familial connections can also be an important means of support for women judges in entering the profession. Another aspect that we looked at in the volume was the emergence, although still relatively small, of women judges networks and associations. Now, I will note that what was quite striking is it seems that there is more activity in this area in terms of lawyers' associations, so that is women's lawyers' associations or women's divisions within, for example, a bar association. More of these seem to exist, at least numerically, compared to associations that are specific to women judges. But again, this has changed, and I think in the last few years there are more countries where women's judicial associations have been established, and I think this is a real area to watch in the future in terms of who these associations include, what kind of activities these associations run, how they can support women judges, and the ways in which they can potentially even influence the policies of courts and of law reform more broadly. So let me come now just to a few thoughts then on what it might look like going forward to progress a research agenda in this area around women judges. Of course, we've had the very significant impact of COVID-19, and I think we shouldn't underestimate the effect that has had on courts, including obviously on the socioeconomic status of countries, including on the nature and robustness, if you like, of democracy. And I think there are challenges that COVID continues to have for many countries in the region. I think the second is that it struck me in the research that we did that there actually are not a lot of accounts or stories in English of either the first women judges or simply women judges in particular jurisdictions. And obviously I'm speaking about English language scholarship here, but I do note that of course in some jurisdictions there may be the emergence of scholarship in other languages. I think these stories and narratives of women judges are really important. We can focus on the statistics, but I think it's really in understanding women's stories and their career paths, and in being able to highlight those examples as models for future aspiring judges is really, really significant. Another, as I mentioned earlier, I think we do need to start from the source, that is from legal education. And, you know, I take that myself seriously in terms of my own position here at a university in Australia and the ways in which my own faculty needs to be supporting women who are students in our faculty and their future career aspirations. And I think that's also a place to start in the region as well. And then, you know, finally, and as the academic on the panel, I can perhaps also say this, one of the, you know, findings, I think, in our research was that, yes, in some jurisdictions, women judges certainly have and can make a difference, and that has been really significant, even on things that are not related to gender equality, such as judicial independence. However, there are also examples where it is less clear that women judges make a difference in this area, or it is perhaps simply opaque or perhaps even tokenistic, as I think the researcher from Thailand who wrote the chapter suggested it may be in some contexts. Now, of course, that's open to debate, and in many countries it's very hard to generalize because of the diverse nature of the judiciary, and so it may depend on the type of court you're referring to, as well as on the level of the court, that is, whether it's an apex court or whether it's a court of first instance. But let me just conclude by thanking the organisers for the opportunity to be here. I very much want to hear, and I'm looking forward to hearing from our judges on the panel and distinguished guests, and look forward to questions and discussion time afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Crouch, for assisting us in understanding the regional context and providing such important insight into the diverse meaning of judicial feminization, political economy consideration, the complexity of achieving gender equality across different social, religious, and cultural contexts. Before moving to the next speaker, I really would like to recommend your research to our audience, because it makes really a significant contribution to the study of women judges worldwide, in particular because it covers jurisdictions that have not yet been widely examined. There are examples from India, Indonesia, Malaysia, Nepal, several Pacific Island nations, Sri Lanka, Philippines, etc. And its findings are really deeply rooted in the history and tradition of each legal system, so offering a very valuable perspective for developing tailored and country-specific solutions. So thank you very much. I now have the pleasure of giving the floor to the second panelist. We have Justice Saitip Sukatipan, who has been at the forefront of the Thailand judicial system for the past 2 decades. Justice Saitip, as a woman judge since 2003, your journey reflects the evolving role of women in Thailand judiciary. Based on your experience, would you please provide insight into the current gender composition of the Thai judiciary and the key factors that help you overcome barriers and advance into leadership roles within the judicial system of Thailand. Over to you.
A very good morning to all of you in Bangkok and other places in Asia, especially to Melissa. We have been getting together for a while during your preparing your last book. Really glad to see you. I'm so delighted to be among colleagues from professional and academic circle to share my experience on this important topic. Let me share with you some of my observation on how things going for women judges in Thailand. And as Simone has mentioned that from my 20 years career path in the judiciary, I seem to be at the front line within the system. I must inform you that I am at the administrative court, which is separate from the Court of Justice, which is the principal judicial organization in Thailand. So my experience may be somewhat different. However, I think I could share with you some insight and observation about my colleagues in the Court of Justice. The Thai court system composed of 3 distinct courts, that is Court of Justice, the military court, and the administrative court. In terms of gender composition, the 3 system has been overwhelmingly male, and the more so, the higher one climbs the judicial ladders. I will touch upon the question of that, where's all the women judge has gone on the way. In the latest report indicated that among 4,500 judges of Court of Justice, a bit over 30% are women. But since the last 20 years, more female applicants has passed the selection process for the position in the Court of Justice. But still, again, men still dominate the higher echelon of the court. But as you have already learned that since the year 2020, we has witnessed first female president of the Supreme Court. And after that, there has been another 3 women judges ascending to the highest position, including the present one, Honorable Jantakan. And then let's turn to my court. The proportion between male and female is almost the same as the Court of Justice, although the recruitment process is quite different. But the most exciting is about the military court. The overall proportion between men and women are quite the same picture, but you may be surprised that the Supreme Military Court of Thailand comprises of 3 justices, and all of them are ladies with the rank of Major General. I really just learned about this from my colleagues who has the experience in the military court just yesterday. It's quite surprised me. And at the very first step of women judges in Thai judiciary in the early 1900s, when the first generation of modern Siam judges were recruited, certainly it was not the time for women to leave their family and housework to pursue the careers in the outside world. But so it was not until the year 1965 that the first women candidate was allowed to join the judiciary. But numerous limitations were persisted. For example, women judges could be appointed to the position only in the family and juvenile courts, and has to be assigned for the post in Bangkok or major cities only, because they were seen as not proficient, not decisive, not tough enough, or not courageous enough. So, and the other justification is that they're concerned for safety for being away from home. But the situation has gradually changed. As Melissa has mentioned, there's more and more women or young girls to enter the law school. That's the same in Thailand. And I would say that women law students has outnumbered, and would say that they outperform their male counterparts in law school. Women law students has frequently got their first honor degree, and even in the selection process to the Court of Justice, they got the first rank of their batch. So if we look at the selection and appointment rule and procedure, which I think that is the one of the major reason that support the advancement of Thai judges, Thai women judges to the upper ladder of the court. As our judicial selection process is rather simple, it operates in a kind of career judiciary. Thus, to become a judge, a candidate must be only have the bachelor degrees in law and entitled as barrister at law, with 2 years experience in the legal profession. And then they just gone through the general selection exam, which has been controlled by or administered by the judge of the Court of Justice themselves. One very important thing that I noticed is that the selection process includes only a qualifying academic exam and oral exam, and the criteria is based on the academic merit only. There is no requirement of any kind of recommendation or nomination from the Bar Association at all. So I think this is something that is quite open for the woman to enter to the selection process, because if they don't have to, have a kind of recommendation or nomination from the Bar Association, their barrier as a ladies, it has been loosened up a lot compared to some other system that I have heard about. Then if we don't have that kind of procedure of recommendation or nomination from outside, so all the selection process are solely in the hand of the judicial personnel committees. And during the early years, the oral exam, maybe some women candidate encounter some difficulties from the attitude or mentalities of those committees who are mostly men. They may reflect some presumption anticipating that the women can perform their role as just different from the men counterpart, or sometimes they focus on personal and family matters, something like that. But that's not been far-reaching to the level of intimidating or insulting. And later, the oral exam is basically a structured exam with a standardized set of questions. So it can be said that women tend to be better represented in court through the selection and appointment process that is structured to ensure a process based on academic merit. But come to the question that about the advancement of women just to the leadership position or the administrative level. From the statistics figure, they seem to, the women judge, from the very beginning, they can enter the court at the first instance for a big number. But after that, they just seem to fade away along the way when they're getting higher and higher level. As a lifetime career judge would be promoted to higher level on basis of ranking order from their first appointment. That is, from the rank that you get from the entrance exam, it will be with you for the whole career life. So you may anticipate that you will reach at what level in your career, and also guaranteed by the principle of judicial independence. Judges are not under strictly performance evaluation by the superior, except for very, very few serious cases. Therefore, men and women judges are under the same career promotion tracks in accordance with their ranking order. And there are no intervention from other organizations, whether it be political or professional. Maybe the exception is about the process of appointment judges in the Supreme Administrative Court as myself, because according to the Constitution, the justice of the Administrative Court has to be approved by the Senate. and has to pass through a kind of oral interview by the committee of the Senate. But I would say that among my batch of 13 men fellows, I got the highest votes from the Senate. So I think that there's something besides the question of gender in considering who's the most suitable person to enter the Supreme Court at the administrative court. So then I would identify the reason for the advancement of the women judge in Thailand to quite a higher position, that the recruitment and the promotion system based on academic merit and seniority ranking is a can be said that it's a organizational mechanism that have enabled women leadership in the court, as we have seen from the case of 4 president of the Supreme Court of Justice. But there are still small number of women justices at the high level for the big picture, such as the president of the appeal court or president of the specialized division of the Supreme Court. From my observation some years, I've seen that after stepping up the career ladder to the position of the president of the chamber in the first instance court of Thailand, which may take about 10 years, judges, men and women, may take different paths. That's something really interesting. The first part is continuing their adjudication work, that is, go to the hearing room, go and make the judgment along with the administrative task of being the Chief Justice of the provincial court, and then so on. Or the other part is continuing solely on the adjudication work and be promoted to the level of court and appeal and Supreme Court without taking any administrative position. The latter group may remain at the certain locations or in Bangkok or in some large city for a long time without any rotation. Therefore, quite a number of women judges choose this second part so that they can stay with their families or taking care of their aging parents. And at some point, they decide easily to quit because of those personal reasons. And also for women 50 years old, maybe some years of crisis in their health condition. So why the lesser number of men judges choose to divert to the sole adjudication part, so they continue to take the challenging journey climbing the ladder. So I may cite my experience during the period that I holding the position of the president of chamber at Ubon Ratchathani Court, 100 kilometers away from my hometown in Chiang Mai, where my mother was residing. At the time, I was 50s, and my mother is 80s. She's suffering from Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease. So at that time, I got to think seriously about early retirement to get back to take care of my mom. Luckily, that my younger brother and his family has lent a helping hand on that matter, so I can go on pursuing my career. But not everyone is lucky enough to have that kind of support. So in my opinion, the requirement of taking care of family, maternity care, and also health vulnerability of women at some age are the most obvious reason for the disappearance of women just in the leadership position. And to respond to the question by Simone about the barriers to leadership roles in the system that I have encountered, I think that I may not be the kind of average case study for average women judges just in the system, as I start my career as a scholar in the university with a PhD degree from the US. So with all this kind of academic background and some other qualification that have been trained during my scholastic year, like logical reasoning or articulate arguments, or other things that may help me to, to break through or some of the barriers among the members of my colleagues who is male. And even sometimes I can lead a discussion in the chamber in a very, very commanding manner, I guess. So I got less trouble and less barrier along the way. And also I don't have kids, and I luckily, as I have said, that I have not much burden about my parents at that time. So I just follow the step of earlier generation of the women judges of my court. So there is no formal or procedural barrier on the promotion or advancement for my personal experience. But as I have mentioned, that all the structures of the society, that we still need sort of maternity care or some take care of the ailing parents as something really the burdens of women. So that's why some of the women has just disappeared along the way. But to conclude my remarks, I think that I myself personally, I'm waiting for the new generation of women judge. You may say the generation Y, of the year of right now there should be about 35 or something. They are the large batch coming to the Court of Justice right now, and this group of younger generation, they come along with their self-confidence, independence, and also the new kind of family life. So I'm looking forward to this new generation to come, and maybe their potentiality will be realized in a much more efficient way. So to conclude, I think that from my experience, I think that the women judge, we are not identical with the man counterpart, but in terms of intellectual ability, performance quality, work habit, or dedication, I think that we are unquestionably equivalent, maybe in some case better than our man counterpart in some way. So I think that for Thailand, we are quite fortunate that we are in a context that the women judges can have great opportunity to advance in their career, maybe better than some other fellows societies in Asia. Thank you for your attention. Then please go back to Simone.
Thank you, Justice. Thank you, Justice Saitip, for sharing your very important personal experience and highlighting some of the critical measures that the Thai judiciary has put in place to overcome the barriers that prevent women from accessing the judiciary. We will discuss also later on, but I'm sure that your personal journey will be inspiration for other women and law students and young girls to take on this very important profession. So thanks again. And let me also commend the remarkable progress Thailand's judiciary has also made in promoting gender equality. Now, I would like to shift our focus to Indonesia. So I would like to move to our third panelist, Dr. Arskal Salim. Doctor, in your paper, Gendering the Islamic Judiciary, Female Judges in the Religious Court of Indonesia, you highlighted that while women judges in Indonesia possess the same legal skills as their male counterparts and often exhibit greater gender sensitivity, they have yet to fully leverage these strengths to benefit women litigants. Could you please elaborate a bit on these findings? And also if you could highlight positive developments in this area over the past decade in your country. Over to you.
Okay, thank you, Simon. Good morning, everyone. My name is Arskal Salim. I'm a Secretary of Directorate General of Islamic Education at the Ministry of Religious Affairs Indonesia. Also, I'm a professor of Islamic law at Syarif Hidayatullah State Islamic University, Jakarta. Before I address your question specifically, I would like to present some background, so to highlight how women judges in Indonesia, and I'll present my presentation here. The presence of female judges on judicial boards is often associated with the resolution of gender inequality in the legal practice of the Muslim world, especially here in Indonesian case. The persistence of gender inequality has led to a notion that women should be involved on judicial boards. Many people, especially activists for the rights of women, hope that the inclusion of women on judicial boards will or can minimize, if not eliminate, the problem of gender inequality. And Indonesia has been the most welcoming of female judges in Islamic courts compared to other Muslim countries in the world. The appointment of female judges to the Islamic courts in Indonesia was initially challenging due to the traditional Islamic requirement for a judge to be a major Muslim males, as stipulated in a number of classical Islamic jurisprudence. But thanks to local tradition of economic partnership between husband and wife in Indonesia for many centuries, women or wives not been prevented from actively supporting their spouses working in the fields, cultivating lands and harvesting rice or selling food or garments in the market, in which the concept of joint marital property was established. This in turn led to their engagement in paid jobs in both government and private professional sectors, including in judiciary institutions. Next slide, please. So now I would like to show you a trend in the increased number of women judges in the last 4 or 5 years. So between 29 to 23, we see in both courts, civil courts and religious courts. Actually, we have other courts other than civil courts and religious courts. There are military courts and administrative courts. But as you can see here, that there is an increase steadily between 2019 to 2023. So in Indonesia's civil courts, from 26% to 29%, and at the religious courts, it was between 22% to 27%. So this is so close to the requirement of women representation in public sectors, as that stipulated in Indonesian regulation that women must be represented at least 30% in a number of public sectors job. So let's go to the next slide, where I can show you numbers of female judges in Indonesia in different courts of Indonesia. So you can see here female judges in 2018, and we compare it to 2024. Yeah, there is an increase from 1,818 of total 7,037 judges, all judges in 2018 to 2,241 of total 7,729 all judges in 2024. So we'll see that the percentage of the increase of female judges, relatively slightly increased, rising from 24% to 29%. So what are meanings and implication of all this data that I just gave it to you? So first is about representation. Female judges serve as a role models showcasing women's leadership and capability within the judicial system. Their presence challenges traditional gender norms and encourages more women to take leadership roles. Second is about cultural change. Their involvement in the judicial systems can shift public perception about women's roles in society, promoting a broader acceptance of gender equality and women's rights within the community and among religious leaders. The presence of female judges in Indonesian religious courts, for instance, has boosted women's engagement in public sector's jobs. And third is about influencing legal outcomes. The inclusion of women in the judiciary can impact legal interpretation and verdicts, leading to more equitable decisions regarding family law, inheritance, and other issues traditionally biased against women. And four, increased access to justice. Female judges might be more empathetic to women's issues and concerns, leading to better understanding and sensitivity in cases involving female litigants. This helps ensure that women's voices are heard and considered in legal matters. Now, as you asked, Simon, do women judges benefit women litigants? So I conducted a case study along with Professor Ais Nurrawati at UIN Yogyakarta. So we co-authored this chapter. We found that women judges have more empathy and their life experience means a better understanding of issues. And we also noticed that there are some women's organizations working in Aceh who collaborate with NGO, international NGO, to train female judges on gender equality. And what interesting point here is that male judges were also invited to join the training programs. So something that might not happen somewhere else in other provinces for that time. Yeah. So the result of the training led to more equitable perspectives among female and male judges in Aceh on resource control and custody. So very often that women judges offer custody to mothers rather than to father, and in many cases that male judges confirm such a decision. And also in our article, we compare to female judges of Tangerang religious courts. It appears that Aceh female judges demonstrate greater gender sensitivity than those Tangerang judges. But there are challenges faced by female judges, which then we can still some constraints for women judges to benefit women litigants more. First, the impact of judicial panel system on decision-making and advocacy for gender equity. Because here in Indonesia, we have a panel system where a judge, it's a council, consists of 3 judges, 1 act as a chair, 2 as a members. So if it is if it is chaired by woman, it would be likely that the decision will benefit women. But if she's the only one judge in the panel, so that can be different. So especially because there is internal resistance from male colleagues within judiciary panel, so that happens quite a lot. And there are also factors leading to a lack of gender sensitivity among some female judges. I will before this, let me explain a number of factors that a lack of gender sensitivity. Yeah. Although the Supreme Court has issued regulation number 3, 2017 to promote gender sensitivity case handling, its implementation has not yet resulted in a substantial increase in equitable judicial decisions from lower court judges, even among female judges. This lack of progress is attributable to 3 primary factors. First, some judges lack the necessary competence to recognize and address gender disparities during courtrooms proceedings. Second, judges often adhere rigidly to legal formalism, neglecting opportunities to pursue more just and equitable solutions. And finally, judges express apprehension about potential reversal of their decisions by higher courts, by Supreme Court, for instance, fearing negative impacts on their professional standing. So what we can do for next, so we need to improve. We have three important agendas for gender equality: promoting gender-sensitive policies. Here at the ministry, we encourage more female students, to attend legal education, as Professor Melissa Crouch has mentioned earlier. Collaboration and networking. So I share with his idea that we should to collaborate with women's rights organization, so that will lead to greater advocacy and support for women's legal rights and increase visibility of gender issues within the policymaking arena. And of course, educational advancement, that is to encourage greater investment in legal education for women, empowering future generation, and promoting the idea that women can hold prestigious positions within the legal framework, as Justice Saitib has mentioned earlier. So I should end my presentation here. So thank you, and I return to Simon.
Thank you, Dr. Arsal, for your important reflection and also highlighting, as it's the case in Thailand, the steady increase of women in the judiciary in Indonesia, including in non-traditional courts like religious and military courts. Also, I would like to emphasize what you said, that the increase of women in the judiciary has also fostered the increase of women employment in the broader public sector. So good inspiration from the justice sector. If I may, I would like, Doctor, to follow up briefly on an issue with you. Your transition from academia to public service at the Ministry of Religious Affairs has provided you with both, let's say, internal and external perspectives on the judicial system. Global research has indeed highlighted that women remain underrepresented in religious and customary courts worldwide. So based on your experience, what successful practice from Indonesia have helped strengthen women's roles in religious courts, and how might this lesson be applied in other Islamic contexts? Over to you, Doctor.
Yeah, thanks, Simon. I moved to the ministry since 2018. So, but still, basically, I hold my position as a professor of Islamic law at my university, and I still teach every year, although it is not regular. And basically, what we do here at the Directorate General of Islamic Education, we provide a number of scholarships, and also enlarge access to the higher education, in particular for women to attend to pursue their study at the Faculty of Law and Sharia. So we have like 58 Islamic universities or Islamic colleges all over Indonesia, where every year more than 20,000 students, new students enroll, and half of them are women. And of course, this will be part of their education, their legal education, in order they can later on, when they graduate, they can apply for many positions in legal jobs. Yeah, not only become judges, but they may also become lawyers, or even activists, human rights or gender activists. And as we now focus more on education, especially in Indonesia, we try to also make sort of like a collaboration with human rights organization, with NGOs, in order that they can disseminate the notion of gender equality in campuses in universities. So through infusion or insertions into a number of subjects at the university, Islamic universities, then they have now more and more vision, insights about gender equality. So when they become paralegals, in one position or another, this can support their affiliation, or they tend to defend women's rights, whatever the case. So and at the meantime, we also try to promote gender sensitive policies, to a number of Islamic education under the Ministry of Religious Affairs, especially to minimize or to eliminate the harassment, sexual harassment. So a number of policies has been issued, and we try to establish sort of like a task forces in a number of madrasah, Islamic school, or at the Islamic boarding school in pesantren. So hoping that we can promote further gender sensitivity in Indonesia. That's all, Simon. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Alexalt, for your additional reflection on the critical role of legal education for young women, as this was also emphasized strongly by previous speakers. In the interest of time, I would like now to move to our next panelist, give the floor to Advocate Rida Tahir, to gain a deeper understanding of women representation in Pakistan judiciary. Rida, in your recent World Economic Forum article, you highlighted the significant barriers South Asia face in increasing women representation in the judiciary. You also cited data showing that women comprise less than 10% of judges across the region. Focusing on Pakistan, what do you see as the main obstacles preventing greater women representation in the judiciary? Thank you.
Thank you, Simon, for taking the perspectives from across Asia, including Pakistan. It was very nice to hear from my counterparts as well earlier. There are a number of reasons why women are not able to participate, not only in the lower judiciary, but also in the superior judiciary in Pakistan. One of these, I just want to first clarify the legal position as well. There is currently no legal bar in the law that stops women from participating in the judiciary, but you will see still the number are very low. If I take the example of the Supreme Court of Pakistan, currently there are 17 judges overall in the Pakistani Supreme Courts, but only 2 of them comprise women, which is a very insignificant number, considering the fact that 50% of the population of Pakistan is female. Unfortunately, Pakistan still does not have a female Supreme Court Chief Justice yet, and we are yet to see a female Chief Justice of the Supreme Court in Pakistan. But the first female judge in a Pakistan Supreme Court was appointed in 2022, which was 70 years after Pakistan's establishment, and the second female judge, who is also still serving, was appointed in 2023. So the reason you asked me was the obstacles, and one of the reasons for that would be there are fewer female role models who could inspire other women that this was also a possibility in their career pathways. So one of the things is that there are fewer and fewer role models who can inspire other girls and women to join the judiciary as judges. Another obstacle is the fact that the institutions are not gender responsive. So if I take the example of not only as somebody who litigates in different district courts in Pakistan, I see that there are no female bathrooms, not only for the victims and survivors, but also not for the judges, which creates difficulties for the victim to move forward to bring their case, but also a female judge, which is very much needed in the institution. And then Pakistan is a patriarchal society, I would say, where women still have to take on the role of sharing household burdens, like taking care of the children. And one of the issues which I also recommended in a journal article that I wrote was that if we could have daycare centers for women, so that they could bring their children with them, because currently right now what the situation is that women who have children slowly and gradually escape from the judiciary to act as judges because they are not able to bring their children to work. Overall, it should be a sharing and caring. Household responsibilities should not generally be gendered, but unfortunately, the situation right now is still the same, and it will take some time for that situation to improve. And until then, I think that one of the obstacles is not making the institutions gender responsive so that more women could participate. And then there's also a political aspect as well, which I cannot deny or shy away from speaking about. The bodies that do select the appointment of female judges are mostly made up of the male counterparts, and fewer women are given a position at the table to make a decision with regards to the appointment of other judges. And that is another thing that hinders and creates obstacles for the appointment of women in the judiciary. Recently, there was a amendment to Pakistan's constitution as well, the 26th constitutional amendment, which did not make any specific changes to how we can improve women's participation in the judiciary, how we could increase more female participation, even though there have been many other changes that Pakistan has brought down. For example, in 2019, there was a Supreme Court judicial policy that spoke about Asia's first gender-based violence courts in Pakistan. There have been case laws by the superior courts themselves that say that when there is a victim of sexual violence or any other form of gender-based violence, women are usually more victims according to the data, or young boys and young girls are more victims, and they feel more comfortable in sharing their plight or giving their evidence or making appearance before a female judge or a female magistrate. But despite those judgments, those progressive judgments that do speak about and do acknowledge that to increase access for justice, there is a necessary need to ensure more women participate in the judiciary, fewer action has been taken. Pakistan also has Article 25(3) in the Constitution. So even though there is no legal bar, this specific section says that positive actions can be taken because there has been historic marginalization against women across the world. That's another reality that we cannot deny. And in Pakistan's law, there is the provision for actually making special provisions to promote females in all aspects of their life. That includes the judiciary as well. So it is hoped that in the future, more similar actions could be taken, which could shed light on these obstacles, particularly with regards to the fact of making the institutions more gender responsive, which will give more and more women a chance to participate and move ahead. Because Pakistan also has this system of having the most senior people from the panel of all the people to be appointed as the judges. And because women judges are not able to have that higher experience because they leave the judiciary due to this institution not being gender responsive, then at the end of the day, there's a bigger pool option of more male judges and a fewer pool of options of female judges. So that is another obstacle due to which women judges are not able to be fully represented in Pakistan's judicial system.
Thank you, Rita, for highlighting this challenge, many of which are indeed shared across other jurisdictions. I have a quick follow-up question for you. As you said, also building on your professional focus as advocate, litigation related to women and children rights, and also, as you mentioned, in Pakistan, institutions are not gender responsive, and you have highlighted issues also related to access to justice for women, particularly in cases related to sexual and gender-based violence. So, connecting also to what doctor in Indonesia mentioned about the women judges in Aceh, in your view, how does greater women representation in the judiciary contribute to building a stronger gender-responsive justice system, particularly in improving support for women survivors of violence, seeking legal redress and protection, for example?
Thank you. That is a very a good question, because I would like to give an example from two cases which had a very high impact on the gender responsiveness of the rule of law. And both of these cases were decided by Justice Aisha Malik, who is the Supreme Court, who was the first female Supreme Court judge. When she was female High Court judge in the Lahore High Court, before she was elevated to the Supreme Court, she passed a judgment in the case of Sadaf Aziz. In Pakistan, there was a practice of the two-finger virginity testing in cases of sexual violence. And after giving a very comprehensive overview of the constitutional provisions, which also includes the right to dignity, which is Article 14 of the Constitution, and Article 25 of the Constitution of Pakistan, which grants the right to equality. Justice Aisha Malik provided in her judgment that it was unconstitutional to make and force a female victim who has been a victim of rape to give a two-finger virginity testing. And, it is the fact that a woman, a female judge, understands what the lived experiences of a woman are better than man could ever understand. And that is why for the first time in so many years, this was an invasive procedure that so many women had to go through who were victims of rape. They had to face re-victimization, and a female judge came forward and she provided this judgment that prohibited the two-finger virginity testing, because Pakistan already has a very low conviction rate in cases of sexual and gender-based violence. It used to be 3%, but because of certain changes, which also includes this judgment, it has now changed to almost 16%. There is a 16% conviction rate increase in cases of sexual and gender-based violence. And then there was another very crucial case, which I also want to highlight the difference that it makes when a female joins the court, the Supreme Court most particularly. Pakistan has a very progressive law, the Protection Against Harassment of Women at the Workplace Act 2010, which provides special institutional mechanisms to prevent women from facing workplace harassment. But a three-member bench of the Supreme Court of Pakistan had decided that in the law, in that particular law, when we talk about sexual harassment, it does not include discrimination on just the word harassment, it does not include discrimination on the basis of gender, and it only had to be sexual in nature. The harassment had to be sexual in nature for an action to arise in that law. And then there was a review petition which was heard by the same female judge who said that discrimination on the basis of gender is very much also a part and parcel of harassment at the workplace, because many women face gender-based discrimination at the workplace as well, just because of the fact that they are female or they are a woman or they identify as a woman. So she outlined Pakistan's international law obligations, once again, the constitutional provisions, to come to the conclusion that the law very much includes not only sexual based harassment at the workplace, but also discrimination on the basis of gender. And after this judgment was passed as a review petition, then the law of Pakistan was also amended just to make sure and explicitly stipulate that discrimination on the basis of gender is also a part and parcel of workplace harassment. So adding more women, because we are 50% of the population across the world, there could be some slight changes, but women are, you could generally say that 50% of the population. And if there's no woman at the very superior courts who have the experience of living as a female, then how can they decide what the experiences are of a female and what a woman faces when it comes to sexual and gender-based harassment? So that is another example where the female judge said that a victim's perspective also had to be taken into account when we're talking about harassment at the workplace, and that is really a key to eliminating violence against women and sexual and gender-based violence, not just through laws that explicitly go ahead and prohibit sexual and gender-based violence, but also the interpretation of the courts that make you understand that even the superior courts in Pakistan are acknowledging that even the discrimination on the basis of gender is very much part and parcel of sexual and gender-based violence. So I see that more representation of women, and not just women, but also marginalized communities of people who belong to other marginalized communities, whether they are religious minorities, whether there's transgender persons. There is a need for the judicial institutions to be more responsive to the needs of the population, to better understand, to better give those binding judgments that can make a more progressive rule of law that caters to the needs of every individual, whether they are differently abled, whether they belong to a community which is a religious minority in a country. All of that has a substantial effect on the rule of law and achieving access to justice.
Thank you, Rita. We really appreciate your insights and your powerful examples, particularly from the jurisprudence of your country, which are also critical as a precedent to address the specific needs of survivor of violence and ultimately enhance equitable access to justice. So thank you very much. We are running a bit out of time, so I would like now to move to our last speaker, our partner from the Asian Development Bank, Ms. Hannah Lim, will present a key recommendation for advancing women leadership in judicial system across Asia, building also on the ongoing work of the Asia Development Bank in this important development area. Over to you, Hannah.
So much, Simone. Can I just make sure that everyone can hear me and see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, honorable justices, judges, ladies and gentlemen, warm greetings from here in Manila, and it's a great privilege to be able to be with you in this important webinar on International Day of Women Judges. Really want to extend my gratitude to the UNDP team for inviting us to speak about a planned regional technical assistance looking to support Asia and Pacific women judges, specifically by developing a network. And this particular technical assistance is still underway. We're still working to get it through the approval process here at the bank. And if it does go through, it will be implemented by the Law and Policy Reform team here at the Office of the General Counsel the bank. Just for, if in case anyone isn't familiar with what the bank does, we are a multilateral development bank, and we work together with our partners to solve complex challenges, and one of which is definitely bring together more inclusive policies for the people in our region. And one of our strategic priorities really is around accelerating inclusivity, especially amongst women and girls. And we are looking specifically in 5 areas of economic empowerment, human development, decision-making leadership, time poverty reduction, and resilience to external shocks. And this particular technical assistance on Asia-Pacific Women Judges Network that we're looking at targets the 3rd item, which is supporting women in decision-making and leadership roles. Just to share a little bit about the team that I'm with, we are the Law and Policy Reform team that sits out of the Office of the General Counsel. So it's part of the legal team of the bank, but we're a little bit more operational in nature. And the type of work that we do is really supporting the legal systems in the region around reforms, capacity building, knowledge sharing, and we focus in 5 core areas, including women's empowerment and inclusive growth. So I'm going to jump right in the interest of time to talk a little bit about this specific TA that is currently under the process of being submitted for approval. And we're looking at supporting the development of a network for Asia and Pacific women judges. And the question that we really had was, how can we work to assist the substantive participation of women judges in this region? And how do we do so with development partners and existing networks? So to get started, we conducted an initial study trying to understand a bit more clearly what is the impact of having women judges. I think one of the clear takeaways is that as one of the 3 arms of government, the judiciary needs to take a leadership position in setting precedent for gender balance and equality in its leadership. And the presence of women judges have shown trends around reduction of corruption and increase in rule of law. Simply the diversity of different perspectives of women can bring about high quality judgments and in turn justice. And it makes women more comfortable as well in terms of accessing the legal mechanisms. And there's also a need for more women role models. I think that came out quite clearly throughout the previous speakers as well. There's also existing context to this landscape that we're working in. There is already CEDAW, there's also the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action, and various other instruments that have been rallying women judges together to recommend the removal of barriers for women so that they can exercise legislative, judicial, executive, and administrative powers as their male counterparts would as well. So part of our initial study involved doing some data collection. And in doing so, the study focused on an initial sample of 6 developing member countries here at ADB. So we looked at Nepal, Pakistan, Philippines, Thailand, Fiji, and Timor-Leste. And one of the first challenges that we encountered was it was actually quite difficult to get accurate, current, and up-to-date numbers of women judges in many countries that we were looking at. Public records were sometimes just not available, but where data was available, and I think previous speakers have already touched on this, there were far fewer women judges in the region, especially in leadership roles. And we also confirmed this through anecdotal evidence through some of our long-term partners with various Supreme Courts in the region. But there are some silver linings here. I just wanted to share an example from the Philippine judiciary where they publicize gender data very clearly and succinctly on their website. It can be found. So that was very encouraging. However, this was certainly not the case throughout the different countries that we had sampled. We touched on in our study on some of the barriers, and I think our speakers in the previous in this seminar have already addressed this. So issues around societal and cultural norms, expectations of the roles that women should play, staying at home, Political administrations, certain political regime changes can act against women's advancement, lack of education and outreach, recruitment and appointment processes being favored towards male candidates, and working conditions that may be perceived to be unsuitable for women. But overall, I think a key takeaway is that gender needs to be a critical consideration when it comes to holistically determining the role of women within a judiciary and what roles they can and cannot take on. And it has to be considered holistically with all other factors. Part of our initial study also looked at what were the existing networks and support out there. And we were very encouraged to see that there is quite a lot of support in the landscape, including this webinar that is being pulled together by UNDP Judicial Integrity Network. And so what we're looking to do here at ADB is to really complement what is already existing, both at the international as well as the national level. Some thoughts on what might be needed to bring about substantive equality, because we're looking not just at increasing the numbers of women, but we're also looking at making sure that these numbers are represented at all levels and that their participation and involvement is substantively at an equal footing with their male counterparts. So here are some of the examples that were floated up at our study. And of course, what we really hope to be able to do is to support with the development of networks. When we looked at the networks that were already in play, we could really see that a key theme was really that collective action really helps to support with the advocacy for the advancement of women's rights. So that's something that we were very keen to be able to continue to support at a regional level, specifically also focusing at some of the unique cultural contexts and development stages that some of our developing member countries may be at. So this will be the main focus of our technical assistance program when it does come through. We'll be looking at supporting with more data collection to be able to supplement further analysis and academic research on gender in the judiciaries. We're really hoping to be able to create a platform for experience and knowledge sharing within the region, looking also to deploy capacity building training sessions, and eventually, and of course, subject to the requests of our counterparts within the judiciaries, to support as well with institutional reform. So that is an overview of the work that we're hoping to be able to do coming 2025. So hopefully we'll be able to share more updates in the future. So thank you for listening, and I'd like to turn the time back to Simone.
Thank you. Audio is back. So thank you, Anna, for showcasing the great work ADB is doing. And hopefully we'll do also in partnership with UNDP in the region. Now I would like to express my sincere thanks to all the distinguished panelists for sharing their expertise and experience today. We will now move to a 15 minutes Q&A. So please submit your question in the chat box. We already received some questions, so I will now try to cluster the question under thematic areas and may hand over to the panelists. And also raise your hands in case you want your microphone to be enabled. So thank you very much. So I can see there are some questions in the chat. Some are more policy option related, while some are more focusing on systemic barriers. So we have a question from a participant which mentioned it's still rare for a woman to be the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. Is it possible for a woman to lead an institution like the Supreme Court in the future? What policies or reform do you believe are necessary to ensure more women reach leadership position in the judiciary? So we have discussed some of these policy and reforms that are necessary to strengthen women leadership, but maybe additional reflection from the panelists. So I don't know who wants to take the floor. Maybe a judge would be great. Maybe Judge Satip. I don't know if you want to take this question about why it's so difficult to have a Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, as Thailand has 4 consecutive in the past 5 years. So I think you are the best person to answer this question. So over to you, Judge, and then we move to other questions.
Thank you, Simone. Yeah, I think that from the Thai cases seem to be a very promising one. As I have mentioned that in our system of recruitment and promotion, there are a pretty positive, positive approach toward the gender diversity, as we have, no specific qualification at all about gender. So since we have perhaps the answer to the question that is that I think that more and more law students, they are from the university, a lot of girls, women law students has entered the university, and also they are very, very good at their academic record, and also they are quite have a very dedication to the entering the court. But I think that the problem is still with the social and cultural norm that I already have mentioned. Some of the most promising or rising star of the batch, when she reached a kind of a certain stage of her life, she may have to take a kind of very, very disappointing option to choose that her family life or something like that. So I think that for the case of Thailand, I think that we have no barrier from the kind of structural or procedural sphere, but only we got to try to find out, about how the supporting system for the women judge in the court to have the kind of work and work-life balance in the future, in order that they can stay on course toward the leading role. Because I think that in terms of the qualification, like their characteristic, their personality, or their academic ability, we are not anyway less superior than our men counterpart at all. But so I think that in the next future, after the society has gone through some certain change, as a enter for the new generation, there may be some new options for the younger generation women judge. Yes, I think that this may be some observation from my country. Thank you.
Thank you, Justice. We have also closing remarks from Judge Nani from Indonesia. I'm sure she will also touch upon these issues. Maybe now we can address this question, which is about systemic barriers. So how can we address systemic barriers such as unconscious bias and work-life balance challenges to create a more inclusive and supportive environment for women in the legal profession? There is another question which is similar to this one. It's about which is more influential between a regulation that accommodates the number of women judges in leadership position, for example, quota, or the efforts of women judges who must prioritize their careers over other aspects of their life, such as ultimately sacrificing their family in order to get more opportunities to reach leadership positions. So we are really have a question about the struggle of work-life balance for a woman be able to access judiciary position. So who would like to answer this question beyond Justice Atip? Again, we had a question. So I don't know, Rita, you are a young woman advocate from Pakistan. So how do you cope with these, compelling issues related to balance of expectation also in relation to your role as a woman in the society? And then maybe also Melissa, as you did, I'm sure your research also touch upon these issues as well. So.
My experiences being a litigator myself in the courts as well as from my country, I see that a significant number of women do want to participate in the judiciary, not only as advocates, litigators, but also participate in the judiciary as judges. What's really lacking is the institutional response and the support that women need so that they can balance their work life along with some campaigns and awareness raising such as he for she campaigns, where we can pull everybody out and really have a discussion on how we can change these burdens that women face, how we can have more sharing responsibilities not only with the children but also among the household, because a quota system could never work, especially in a place, in an institution like the judiciary. What would work much better than that is giving women the institutions that help them succeed, that help them flourish, that help them experience and compete without any discrimination against them. So that is something that we need to do slowly and gradually, give women and women and girls the chance to compete professionally in a healthy environment, to grow and to prosper and to learn, and not to just give up on the system and escape from it. So I believe that if we improve the institutions, if we provide the specific needs of women, if we make sure that there are harassment committees that will take a swift action where a woman faces or a female judge or litigator faces harassment, if there are separate bathrooms for them, if there are daycare centers, then women and girls will be able to compete. And now we are even talking about, in Islamabad is a capital territory in Pakistan, where we are talking about introducing paternity benefits, that even male judges could bring their children to the courts if we have daycare center. It will help everybody, not just the female counterparts, but everybody, if we just change this discrimination against women, or this burden on them that only they have to take care of the children, or only they have to go back home and give their duties in the household as well. If slowly and gradually we eliminate those burdens against women, I really feel like the society would be able to prosper and we could enhance the access to justice for everybody.
Thank you, Rita. Maybe Melissa,
Yes.
please.
Sorry, I was just looking for the unmute button. Thank you, Rita, and thank you for those questions. I wondered if I could just pick up on the aspect that you mentioned around unconscious bias, because I think that's a really interesting concept and often a challenging one to think about in terms of what does bias look like in a particular context. And I think it might, sometimes look different in different contexts. But I think what we've also heard from many of the speakers today is really the ways in which there are, many actors within legal systems and court systems in particular who can play a role in addressing and reducing bias. So obviously it's not only judges themselves, whether they are men or women, but it's also administrators within the courts, It's also parties to court cases, respecting women judges, as well as lawyers and prosecutors. And so I think, looking across the different actors who operate within the court system is really important because, unconscious bias can occur across any of those sectors. And so taking a multi-actor approach, if you think looking beyond judges to other actors within the court system, including the police as well as many other types of actors. So I think that's just one way of thinking about unconscious bias as something that does not only affect judges but others within the court system. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. So before maybe addressing other questions written in the chat, I can see Judge Alan has raised the hand. So please, over to you. So we can also hear.
You have to wait. We come back to him.
Okay, so I understand there are some technical issues. We can get back to you, Judge Alan. So
Simone, sorry, you're muted.
Can you mute me?
Can't hear you.
Thank you. Thanks for pointing this out. So what I was saying is Judge Alan has raised the hand.
I think it's not there.
It's not there anymore. Okay, so while we wait for Judge Alan to speak, maybe I can consider other questions related to systemic barriers. So I can merge, there are two questions related to why women are seen as less competent by public and male judges. How can we address this bias? And how do we address gender equality while there is still a perception that leaders must be men? So maybe I would refer this question to Dr. Arksal, who represents the male community in this chat. So maybe you can address this question.
Thank you, Simon, for that question. Yes, I think these systematic barriers often affect the way the judge, especially in the panel system like Indonesia, got affected. And I see that support from the higher courts, the Supreme Court, is especially important. And it is now there is a guidance on how to deal with female litigants when they become parties of the cases. So often that women judges and even male judges feel that whenever they decide making a decision, and that appeal to the higher level, to the appellate or to the Supreme Court, that case is then be annulled, and that's why they feel that, well, if I try to exceed what is said in the regulation, even though that support or have more gender equality, but then it will be annulled, will be revoked by a higher courts. So what's the point? And even that will affect their judicial credential. So support from the higher courts is important in this case to avoid or to eliminate that systematic barriers. And also, I noticed that from my experience in Aceh, when that time Toyota Asia Foundation working along with a local organization, they were training female judges as well, male judges in Aceh. Not long after they were trained, whenever they have cases, they try to make a sort of like increase their gender sensitivity. I'll give you an example from the field that I also included in one of my books, where there was a case about the dispute about the insurance benefits, and the it was deceased in the tsunami. It's a victim of the tsunami. This husband left a wife who also died in the tsunami, and all the children. So the beneficiaries who existing are the parent of the husband, employee, and siblings of the employee. So according to the law, this property, this insurance benefits must go to the existing beneficiaries, which is a parent of employee and siblings employee. But the judges, female judges, try to understand that such insurance benefits not necessarily a property belong to the husband, but also a joint marital property, which heirs of the wife, the deceased wife, also have entitlement to get that a portion of the insurance benefits. So the female judges decided that insurance benefits must be divided equally to the heirs of the deceased husband and to the heirs of the deceased wife. So I can see here that the panel judges who were trained, for that particular program, gender sensitivity program, they try to identify and locate the gap of the bias in relationship between husband and wife, and in the big context between family of the husband and family of the wife. So that's something that also I find very important. And the last one is women judges in the leadership position. I can see that now there are in Indonesia, there are many courts, not only at civil courts, but also religious courts led by female judges. And I think this is also important to encourage more decision that impact positively to female litigants. So I guess these three points that I just mentioned might overcomes those systematic barriers. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Raksal, for providing positive example from Indonesia. In the interest of time, maybe let's pick the last two questions. And I would like also the speakers, if they can stay 5 minutes more, as we have some technical issues at the beginning, because we have also closing remarks. So maybe a question, okay, we have a question directed to Anna. So in Afghanistan, since the takeover by the Taliban in August 2021, women judges, including former governments appointed judges, were removed and replaced by an all-male madrasa graduate judges. Most of the former judges, especially the women judges of Afghanistan, were scattered and mostly live outside the country. Question for you, Anna. Is the ADB doing anything to support these Afghan judges in diaspora, including bringing them together, supporting them to stay connected to regional mechanisms, or have they been forgotten?
Thank you.
So,
thank you so much.
question number one, and then there is another question on digitalization in courts. So how digitalization in courts is important to advance gender equality. So this is open for everyone. I know, Anna, you were working on digitization with LexisNexis before, so you're also welcome to answer, but also happy for others to take this question on. Over to you, Anna, about Afghanistan.
All right. Thank you, Simone. Yeah. So the situation in Afghanistan is a very difficult one right now, and it is something that we are all concerned about. The current TA that is still about to be processed, the focus is going to be quite specific in scope to a handful, specifically 3 jurisdictions in South and Southeast Asia that will be working with their judiciaries on. Hopefully there'll be scope to expand this into the future, but also keeping in mind that situation in Afghanistan is one that probably requires quite a separate approach to adequately addressed, and a broad regional almost kind of generic platform to discuss the issues of women judges in generic context may not be the most adequate in addressing those issues. So that's my thoughts in terms of Afghanistan. In terms of digitization, definitely digitization when applied to support access to justice, and when it is applied properly, because not all digitization efforts are always done well. it can be very helpful. For one, being able to access legal services online versus having to go down in person is going to be a huge help for time-strapped women. For example, birth registration processes that are essential to ensure that a child is in the national register and is not at risk of becoming stateless. It becomes a lot easier to access if it's online when you're in a rural situation, and if it takes you 10 hours, for example, to go out to the nearest birth registry office to get your child registered. It's not time that you want to take out, and it's probably not something that from a physical activity perspective, having just given birth is not something that you might want to be doing. So digitization can be very helpful, but that we also do have to be mindful of the harms that digitization can bring. My understanding, and I don't have the stats on this, maybe Professor Melissa Crouch would have a better view, but online harms against women are a lot steeper than when it comes to for men. So having adequate training and sensitization of online spaces for women needs to be taken into account. But overall, I think digitization does have a lot of potential to support access to justice if it's done well. But I'd like to hear from the other speakers.
So thank you. If a quick follow up on this, and then we move to the closing.
No, I mean, I'll just say I endorse what Hannah said. She said it very well, and I don't have anything particular to add to that around online.
So I look at the time, so I just want to read a comment that was written in the chat, because I think it summarizes also our discussion. But let's be honest, justice isn't just about laws and courtrooms. It's about people, the stories, and the impact we can make on society. And as a woman in the judiciary, I have seen firsthand how diversity and inclusion can transform the way justice is delivered. So I wanted to reflect this very important comment before moving to our last item. So thank you to all panelists for your active engagement. We now approach the end of the webinar, and I'm honored to invite Justice Nani Indrawati, Judge of the Supreme Court Civil Chamber of Indonesia, to deliver our closing remarks. Over to Justice Nani.
Thank you, Simon. Distinguished guests, esteemed colleagues, and fellow champions of gender justice, very good afternoon. It is an honor to join you today as we conclude this important discussion on women's leadership in the judiciary across Asia. This conversation is underscore both the progress we have made and the challenges that remain in the achieving gender equality within our judiciary systems. Today, we mark the International Day of Women Judges, a day officially recognized by the United Nations General Assembly in 2021 to highlight the crucial role that women play in judicial institutions. The resolution establishing this reaffirms that the active participation of women in decision-making on equal terms with men is not only a matter of justice, but also a prerequisite for sustainable development, peace, and democracy. A judiciary that is representative and gender responsive enhances public trust, strengthens the rule of law, and ensures that justice is accessible to all. Ladies and gentlemen, Indonesia recognizes that imperative. The Supreme Court of Indonesia has long been committed to gender justice and has worked closely with UNDP to advance this cause. We are proud to have established the Indonesian Women Judges Association, we call it in Bahasa, Badan Perhimpunan Hakim Perempuan Indonesia, or BPHPI, since September 2023, which serves as a platform for solidarity, knowledge sharing, and advocacy. In addition, we are fostering women's leadership through a Women-to-Women Judges Mentorship program, an initiative designed to equip women judges with the skills, confidence, and network necessary to pursue leadership opportunities within the judiciary. Yet our work is far from complete. The statistics remind us that across Asia, women remain underrepresented in judicial leadership. Cultural barriers, structural biases, and the lack of gender-sensitive policies continue to impede progress. We must remain committed to creating safe and enabling environments for women in the judiciary, free from discrimination, harassment, and implicit biases. To our fellow judges, policymakers, and colleagues from UNDP and other partners, I urge you to continue advocating for policies that promote gender inclusivity, encourage women professional development, make barriers to their advancement. Let us ensure that the new generation of women judges is not only included, but empowered to lead. Ladies and gentlemen, the shift toward a gender balance and gender responsive judiciary is already underway. It is our collective responsibility to accelerate this momentum. Let us leave today's discussion with renewed commitment and concrete action that will move us closer to a judiciary that truly represents the diversity and aspiration of the people it serves. Thank you, and let us continue working together to uphold justice, equality, and the rule of law. Thank you, Simon.
Thank you, Justice Nani, for highlighting these key initiatives, especially the Indonesian Women Judges Association and the Women Judges Mentorship Program. As today's discussion has emphasized, gender equality in the judiciary is not just a question of fairness, but it's fundamental to integrity, legitimacy, and effectiveness of the justice systems. I have prepared very long key takeaways, but I'm not going to read it because we are running out of time. So I just would like to highlight your inspiring example that today have reminded us that leadership and champions for gender equality within the judiciary are essential, not only in breaking barriers, but also in fostering positive role models and driving systemic change. Once again, sincere thank you to all our distinguished panelists for sharing your expertise, and to all of you for being part of this important conversation. As UNDP, we look forward to continue this dialogue with all our partners, working together with you to strengthen women leadership in the judiciary. So thank you very much, and have a great day to all of you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye.
Simon.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
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 Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.